These essential phrases will totally level up your conversations. And you're probably not even using them right now. Now, I I'm a native speaker. You already know that. So I never really worried about my English, but I still remember being surprised the first time I heard someone say the phrase circle back. It was Joe Biden, former President Joe Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki. She'd say, let's circle back several times in a press briefing. And, I kind of knew what it meant intuitively, but I had never heard it in that type of setting, so it sounded a little strange. I'd always pictured it as something that you would say if you were literally taking a walk around outside and searching for something and you have to go back and look. Let's circle back. So that moment several years ago, it reminded me that, even native speakers can get a little confused. We always encounter new things, new language. The English language is changing all the time. So be on the lookout for these new contexts. And here's a little bit of advice. When you hear a new phrase, don't just nod and move on. Try to write it down. Get yourself a notebook or put it in your phone. Repeat it out loud once or twice and make it yours. That one little habit will help you to build your toolbox faster than you think. So, today, I'm going to share some of the most common phrases that make you sound fluent, confident, and professional. And you'll want to stick around to the end for the Mastery Minute because I'll give you the surprising history of a phrase that you may have heard, but you don't fully understand. Let's jump into it. Let me tell you about Diego. Diego is one of my coaching clients from Spain. Now, he spoke great English, but during meetings, he'd sometimes freeze up because it wasn't because he didn't know the grammar, it was because he didn't have the phrases ready to go. His manager might suggest a new plan or something, and Diego would just say, well, okay, that's good. And the conversation would die right there. So later on, we worked on upgrading his responses. I helped him to develop some of these phrases. So the next time, instead of just saying, that's good, he said, well, that's a valid point. And here's another perspective we might consider. That got people's attention and got the conversation flowing. And later on, his boss told him, hey, you're starting to sound like a leader now. And you know what happens when that happens. When the boss says you sound like a leader, that means he's thinking of you as a leader. And it's all because he learned a few essential phrases, and that's the power that we're going to be digging into today. And if you're finding this helpful already, I want you to hit that like button for me. Don't forget to subscribe and share this with a friend. Let's make sure that nobody misses out on these game-changing phrases. Now, let's break down some of the essentials that you need in your toolkit. Remember, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat, and I'll get to those after the Mastery Minute. So, think about it this way. Conversations are like doors. Some stay closed, some open just a crack. But with the right phrase, that's the key that swings doors wide. And with the keys without these keys, you might sound flat or awkward. But if you've got the keys, you step into a real connection with people. Fluent, confident, and natural. That's why these are not just nice to have expressions. They're essentials that you'll wish you actually had sooner than today. So let's break them down into categories. I've got 4 categories, so you want to stick around for all of them that you can start using today. So let's start with phrases for agreeing. So picture this. You're in a meeting and someone shares an idea. Now, you just nod and say, yes. Well, the room then goes quiet and it feels like you're hitting a red light. Now imagine you say, oh, that's a valid point, just like Carlos did. This helps to keep the conversation going. That's a valid point. And then add something like, we could also, and then suddenly you're switching to a green light. The conversation keeps moving. If you just answer, I agree, the moment ends. But if you respond, I see what you mean, and, see, you're adding more. And the ending could have, so I forgot the first part of that story. You maybe went out and you're chatting with a friend, and they say, I think this movie was good, but it was too long. You could just say, I agree, but that just ends the conversation right there. But if you respond with, I see what you mean, and the ending could have been shorter. Now you're fueling the discussion, and you're trying to keep it going. And let's say you want to agree partially with someone while also raising a concern. Try, I agree to some extent, but you might say, we might miss our deadline if we add 2 more features, depending on the situation. These are small little upgrades, but they're very useful for making you sound more thoughtful and engaged. They help to keep the conversation going and keep it alive instead of dead-ending it with those red lights like just yes or I agree. You want to get the green light phrases like these to keep the conversation going and open that door for more discussion. So those are phrases for agreeing and adding. Let's talk about some phrases for polite disagreement. Notice we're not talking about having a fight, but politely disagreeing with someone. Now picture you're in a meeting and someone says, we should extend the project by 2 months. Now you don't want to just blurt out, well, that's wrong, or that's stupid. Instead, you might calmly say it like, I see it a bit differently. Could we look at the risks of delaying? That one little phrase it keeps the room open for discussion, and you're not being overly defensive. You're not making them defensive either. I see it a bit differently. Or maybe you're just chatting with a friend or a colleague and they suggest using an outdated software tool. You could shut them down, but instead you try, well, that's one way to look at it. But have you considered how the newer software could save us time? See, you're asking a question there. You're not attacking, you're collaborating, you're working together. Here's another example. Maybe a friend says, oh, working late every night really shows dedication. And maybe you disagree with that. I personally do. So you might reply with, I respect your view, and here's another angle. Sometimes balance actually makes us more productive. Yeah, you need a little balance in your life. So you've had a chance to disagree, but you're doing it in a way that builds trust instead of breaking it. Why does this even matter? Sometimes disagreeing directly, like saying that's wrong, can feel rude, especially in English, but I'm pretty sure it sounds rude in any language. These little phrases give you the power to express your opinion and express yourself honestly without actually shutting people down or making them feel put down. Now, another one we've talked about before is phrases to buy time. Now, why do you need to buy time? Well, let's say you're in a meeting and suddenly the boss throws a tough question at you and your mind goes blank. Oh no! Well, instead of freezing or blurting out the first thing that comes to your mind, which may be wrong, you smile and say something like, "That's a great question. Let me think about it for a second." And boom, you've bought yourself some time to think and you look calm without looking panicked, right? Or imagine you're chatting with a colleague and they use a phrase that you're not sure about. Instead of nodding silently, you might ask, "Well, hold on, before I answer, could you clarify what you mean by this thing, by this statement, by this phrase?" Don't be afraid to ask questions like that. It shows that you have curiosity and that you're still confident enough to ask when you're not sure. And it gives you a little bit of breathing room to think. Even in casual settings, let's say a friend asks your opinion on a complicated topic. You can pause and buy some time with a phrase like, "Well, let me gather my thoughts." That short little sentence turns what could feel like an awkward silence into a sign that you're thoughtful and deliberate. And look, native speakers use these all the time. They give you space to think instead of panicking in silence. And they make you actually sound confident instead of rushed. Give it a shot. I think you'll be amazed at how well that works. And number 4, we're going to go with phrases for wrapping things up because you don't want to talk forever. Imagine you're finishing that presentation at work. Well, instead of just stopping cold, you use a phrase to wrap things up. You might say, "To sum it all up, we'll move forward with option B and review progress next week." Everybody nods, we're clear on the next step. Or picture yourself in a casual chat with friends after a long debate about which restaurant to try. And you're just arguing or you can't agree. And finally, you just laugh and say, "Look, at the end of the day, what really matters is that we eat together." That brings a little closure and warmth to the discussion, even if it's a disagreement. And here's another one. Maybe you're mentoring a junior colleague or who's nervous about a project. And after a long discussion, you finish with, "Look, the key takeaway here is that preparation builds confidence. The key takeaway here is," that's such a good thing to help people get that one message distilled down into one line that they'll actually remember. So, what's good about these phrases is that they let everybody know that, hey, I'm bringing this conversation to a close, it's concluding, and they make you sound more organized and professional. And that you can use these in professional meetings or casual chats. They leave the listener with something clear and memorable. All right, we're going to try to wrap this up quickly now. Here's what not to do. Don't rely on the same tired words like good, bad, or okay. They don't add value and they don't help the conversation to continue. Also, avoid going silent when you need time to think. Use those bridge phrases instead that we talked about. The more tools that you have ready and practiced, the smoother your conversation will be. So practice these conversations. And now I want to hear from you. What is one phrase you wish you knew earlier in your English journey? Maybe it's a phrase, or maybe there's a phrase that you still don't fully understand. Either way, drop it in the chat. And I'm sure you'll find others feel the same way. You can put it in the comments or in the chat if you're watching this later on. And here's your challenge for this week. Pick 2 of today's essential phrases. I know we did like 12. You can pick 2 and practice them in real conversations. All right? Notice how people respond. It may surprise you how much smoother things feel. And if this episode helped you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share with a friend. And oh, by the way, you can read the full article at allaboutenglishmastery.com. Link is in the description. And be honest with me now. How many times have you told yourself, I'm just too busy to study English? Well, if it's more than once, mastering English for busy professionals is built for people who have demanding jobs, family commitments, and zero extra time. Kind of like me. Instead of getting overwhelmed with lessons and thick grammar books, you'll get a clear system that only takes 10 minutes a day. That's right, just 10 minutes while you drink your coffee, you sit on the train, or take a break from work. Each short session gives you practical habits and real phrases you can use immediately at work and in life. No fluff, no wasted time, just results that you'll feel in your confidence and mastering your conversations from day one. Now, let's wrap this up with today's Mastery Minute. All right, what is today's Mastery Minute? Now, today's Mastery Minute is one of my favorites. I'll be honest, this is an idiom that I loved. It is the elephant in the room. Now, that doesn't mean literally you have a giant elephant squeezing into your office or at your dining room table. It means there's a big, obvious issue or problem that everyone knows about, but no one wants to talk about. Now, picture a Victorian era parlor like what you see here. In the 1800s, writers of the time, like Ivan Krylov in Russia and later some British commentators, used the image of an elephant standing in a drawing room while guests politely sipped tea and ignored it. And it became the perfect symbol for what happens when people avoid the obvious. So, I mean, imagine a team meeting where sales numbers are way down and everybody knows it. But everybody at the table is just chatting about small updates. Nobody is addressing the real problem. That's the elephant in the room. Or imagine a family dinner where everyone knows Uncle Joe just lost his job, but they talk about the weather instead. There's another elephant. So, calling out the elephant in the room with tact shows courage and leadership. You don't have to be blunt, but you can say, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Our project is behind schedule. Suddenly you've opened the door to real solutions instead of polite silence. And using this idiom makes you sound perceptive and professional and willing to tackle what matters most. Give it a shot. See if you can't work the elephant in the room into your next conversation. All right, and that's all the time we have for today. Tonight, we explored the essential phrases that make your conversation smoother and smarter and more efficient and more confident. Next time, we're going to have some fun. We're going to the restaurant table together, and we're going to practice ordering food in English. From ordering confidently to handling little surprises, you'll get some phrases that make dining out smoother and less stressful. You're not going to want to miss that one. And again, if this episode helped you, hit that like button, share it with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss any future episodes. I'm Dennis Wilborn, and this has been 15 Minute Mastery. See you next time.